Hi, everyone. Welcome to session 4 of the Ed Collab gathering. This is in session 1, workshop 4. And I have the page open, so I just heard myself talk. Okay, here we go. So it's independent reading journeys, helping students discover and celebrate their own ways of thinking. That's perfectly tailored to secondary educators that serve secondary students. While you are viewing today, if you'd like to talk with the amazing Maggie Beattie Roberts, which of course you do, please use hashtag the Ed Collab Gathering space hashtag 4, the number 4. I will have Twitter open. I'll be following along. If questions come in, I'll pass them to you. And also just to say up front, Maggie and I were joking earlier. I'll say it so you don't have to, Maggie. That she said I might have a BBC moment. She's at home, has her kiddos in the other room. But if very adorable children, which they are, like come crawling into the room, we'll just have a family experience, and that's totally fine. And also, Maggie, as I promised you, if you hear screaming in the other room, I'll just come on and talk for a bit. So it'll be great. Maggie Beattie Roberts is a member of the Ed Collab network, which we're so lucky to have her. She's just all around amazing, incredible person. She's co-author with her wife, Kate Roberts, of the amazing DIY literacy. You can find that at Heinemann.com. There's also a link to their book right on this page. If you just go down below here, DIY literacy, teaching tools for differentiation, rigor, and independence. Maggie is a national consultant. She speaks at national conferences, works in schools, just all around incredible. I could go on and on. Can you tell that I just love her so much? So Maggie, I won't take any more of your time. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Oh, awesome, Chris. Thank you so much.
And I'm back here if you need anything, including screaming.
Great. Yes, and I'm wearing the baby carrier in case we do have a BBC moment.
I mean, while for you, I don't want it to happen. I kind of want the at least last 5 minutes.
I kind of secretly want it to happen just so that we have it preserved. Amazing. Okay, well, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
It's so nice to be here and start my day with you all. We're going to be really exploring in this quick 40-minute session independent reading and the supporting adolescents' exploration of thought and analysis, and some writing about reading. So in order to get started, I want you to think about something you've analyzed intensely. It could be the final scene in your favorite TV show. It could be a text message that you received from an old friend. It could be the look on your child's face when they saw something for the first time. It could be it honestly could be like a problem that you're having with your car or your washing machine, right? You're thinking about something you've analyzed intensely. And then let's think about how our mind works when we're thinking about that thing, right? So are you more circular with your thinking? Do you perseverate on one tiny detail over and over and over again? Do you line things up in sequential order? Replay a specific part over and over again in your mind, testing out different theories? You know, when we in real life analyze something intensely, all of our minds work in a slightly different way. Some of us are more linear, some of us are more circular, some really see the macro picture, some really zoom in on the micro. And we see our adolescents doing this type of thinking all the time, right? The beautifully messy work of thinking deeply and analyzing lots of things in their lives, analyzing their own text messages, analyzing a look that their ex-best friend gave them in the hallway, analyzing celebrity Instagrams or tweets, or perhaps their own song lyrics. But when my co-author and teaching partner friend of mine, Kristen Robbins Warren, noticed her 8th graders reading in their independent reading books, / their whole class novels, / their book club books, that they're writing about reading and they're talking about texts when we asked them to analyze them or when they wanted to analyze them, it fell flat in comparison to their vibrant social and emotional lives. The same thinking skills that are vibrant in their personal or social lives can at times lay dormant when we ask them to analyze or interpret or synthesize ideas from a text. So when this happens, it will look like the reading responses or the literary essays or the blog posts are just phoned in or thrown together last minute or not given much care. And they feel more like assignments than personal discoveries. And what Kristen and I really wanted for our students is for analyzing texts to feel like a personal discovery. We hoped that our students could celebrate how their minds worked to arrive at a original thesis statement about a text. And so we began a year of teaching with a specific inquiry. And that inquiry was, how can we help our students discover and celebrate how their minds work to think deeply about a text? And we taught and we watched and we taught and we watched. And after that time, Kristen and I came up with something that we call the independent reading journey. And in this quick session, I'm going to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to outline the independent reading journey as we came to discover it. It's a 4-step process that kids can go on independently in order to arrive at deep, meaningful thinking about any text in their life. The second goal that I have for myself that I want to share with you is that I want to share some specific resources and strategies to help kids progress from their quick initial thought to their deeper, more analytical thinking. And then I'm going to share a lot of examples of student work, so you can see the kids doing that work kind of in real time. And at the end, I will point you to some resources where you can find those images and connect more with Kristen and her work. Okay, so let's talk about it. I want to see how I want to begin here. I want to just give a shout out, give you a visual here as I begin first talking about what an independent reading journey is. So it is a month-long process during that month where each kid chooses their own independent reading book of their choice to read and analyze and critique. And the cycle that kids would go through in that independent reading journey would begin by students capturing their own initial thinking or musings as they read. That could happen in the margin, that could happen on Post-its, that could happen in their notebook. And then after a week of that kind of initial capturing of quick in the moment thinking, we have kids then annotate their own initial thinking to explore their thought in a variety of ways. And after a series of work around that stage, kids culminate their independent reading journey at the end of the month with a formal piece of writing that showcases their analysis, their critique of a text, and illustrates how their minds arrived to get at that point. So students complete one independent reading journey a month across a school year during independent reading time, or at least they did when Kristen and I were developing this work. And our goal was for these journeys to empower students in their own self-exploration and their own thinking process. So here's the deal. The self-selection of book choice was key, right? Because this was all about really saying, you know, Shantae, how does your mind work? How do you arrive at this big analytical thinking that I see you doing when you're talking to your friends in the hallway? If we just kind of gave a kid a book and had them do that work, it just didn't translate as powerfully as if it was a book of choice. So lingering in a month in that independent reading journey was important for students to have kind of an authentic, unhurried reading experience that would allow them to balance both reading time and reading response time. most students in our classrooms, and definitely in Kristen's classroom, read more than one book a month of their choice. We just had them focus on one book for their independent reading journey because it is really important for kids to have plenty of reading time where they don't produce anything, right? Like my reading champions, Donald Miller and Penny Kittle and Kylene Beers, they would all remind us that it's absolutely necessary for students to have time where they just simply read. And Kristen and I really agree with that as well. And so the work at each stage, it was important for Kristen and I as practitioners for that work to be subtle enough so that kids could dip in and out of their reading journeys while preserving their independent reading. Okay, so I feel like what might be helpful next is to go stage by stage and talk a little bit about stage one, give it a name, show you some examples, and then talk a little bit about stage two, give it a name, and show you some examples. So let's start there. Step one. Step one of independent reading journeys is all about having kids gather their annotations, that we really encourage kids to tap into what catches their eye as they read, what captures their attention as they read. And specifically, kind of three things happen in this initial process. One, you as a reader notice when you stop and want to think about something or reread something. You then know what to notice. And then the third thing is you know how to think about what you notice, right? So Kristen says it really beautifully when she talks about how it's important for students to find their own rhythms as readers, right? Their own natural timing of stopping to notice and reflect and begin to leave a trail of thinking throughout a book that they might return to develop some deeper analysis or critique. And so I want to show you a, we obviously had to teach this, right, to kids. And Kristen has a really beautiful notebook page example that I want to share with you. Here we go. Yay. Okay, so this is myself when I was carrying said child that might be in the baby carrier in a moment. And this is Kristen Robbins Warren. Specifically, she's a 8th grade teacher, English language arts teacher at MS 51 in Brooklyn. And I've been studying her teaching for over 10 years and have worked in her classroom many times and am inspired by her work. And so here, when she has kids, when she introduces, you know, friends, we're going to go on an independent reading journey here. And I just want you to spend a week lingering in your initial noticings of a text. You can see that this is her own reader's notebook. And on the one hand side of the page, she kind of gives kids a flight plan of this work, right? Like, how might I set up my notebook? How would my reading notes go? It's a little bit of like a how-to. And then the other side of the slide is her examples, where she's demonstrating with her own independent reading book, and she is capturing little things that she notices and things that she thinks about that. And so when students do this work, kind of going back, we were like, okay, we need to teach kids when to stop, what to notice, and what to think. And let's start with that first piece, when to stop. The two people who have written and talked brilliantly about this piece are Kylene Beers and Bob Probst in their series, Notice and Note. And that series will really help you and your kids figure out, when do I need to stop and notice and note in a text, right? So this might be like one example. I might stop when my character has an aha moment, or I might stop when I notice a contradiction where the character is doing something out of the ordinary, right? But we noticed alongside of their work that, yep, kids need a lot of cheerleading around when to stop and pick up their pen or go to their computer, or just even stop and pause in their mind and say, hey, worth stopping. And it's not just a teacher saying you should really stop there. This is a really critical scene, stop. So we really walked in the footsteps of their work. And then we moved on to also, thinking about, well, when you stop, what do you notice? In fiction, perhaps it's when a character has a major realization, or you begin to notice a theme developing, or you're potentially struck by a metaphor. I'm a forever wannabe poet, and language is always so beautiful to me as a reader, and I stop when I notice something beautiful that the author is doing with their craft. And so really empowering kids of when I want to stop, what I want to notice, and how I want to think, right? Kristen routinely provides guiding questions and sentence starters that encourages the development of kids' own thinking. So if I noticed this metaphor, what did it make me wonder? What does it make me think? What do I find surprising about this moment? Why is this moment important? Hi, friends. So kids spend some time doing that work. For us, when we were trying to figure out the timing of these and how much was too much and how much was too little, we noticed that kids would, if this is like a month-long journey, kids would linger in this initial work for about a week. Not saying that they were taking copious amounts of notes, but really their internal timeline was, I'm going to spend a week reading and rereading and just figuring out what captures my eye. And then we move into stage 2, right? So stage 2 we'll call we're going to call it something super meta, right? Annotating your own annotations, right? So when Kristen and I wrote up this work for an article, which I'll guide you to if you want to revisit this topic more, we call stage 2 annotating your initial annotations. Right? So during stage 2, we really encourage students to revisit and reflect and revise their initial thoughts, right? So when students annotate their initial thinking or their initial annotations, they return to their notes and they look for the good stuff, right? So Lucy Calkins calls this work a similar process like we would have kids read for gold, right? Where they would reread their texts or their notes, mining for the gold. Chris Lehman talks about encouraging kids to return to their notes to develop larger concepts when they are taking notes on a piece of literature or a topic, and as a way to reflect in their notes. So specifically, we have kids reread what they've written with a different color pen in hand, ready to underline or circle their most thought-provoking thoughts that they had in that first stage. When we watch a movie, when we read a series of text messages, when we read a book, we have all kinds, like our mind is flooded with thoughts and ideas and initial, theories about this text. But not all of them are good, not all of them are worth exploring in a blog post or a speech or a literary essay. And I think, really giving adolescents permission to say, you're going to have a lot of thoughts, and some of them are going to be dead ends, and some of them are going to be real moments of possibility to explore. This is what this stage is all about. So let me show you an example from some of our case study kids of what this stage looks like. Okay, right, so here's Sahara's second stage, where you can see that she's kind of gone from her first initial thoughts and what she noticed. And the system that makes sense for this student is to tag that double journal entry full of Post-its and just do some thinking in each box, right? Of now that she's read a little bit more text, now that she's had conversations with her reading partner, now that she's even potentially reread critical scenes or beginnings of chapters, now that she is in a different place with this text, what does she think about her initial ideas? So the title of this stage 2 or step 2 is meta, and this work is meta. It's kids thinking about their own thinking. And so when Kristen and I would do this work with our students, we would help kids say more about their initial notes, again, providing them with guiding questions or sentence starters. Things like, okay, so Sahara, in this moment, what complex emotions does the character feel? Or now I understand that, or this part connects to this part, or what I'm really trying to say here in this thought. I'm wondering if this book is actually going to be about. So imagine if you conference a lot with your kids, you're doing a lot of coaching conferences, really helping kids begin to take seeds of thought and develop a more mature root system, if you will. If you do more whole class teaching, your lessons are, hey friends, I'm going to give you like 5 questions you can ask yourself to help you think about your own thinking. So you may not find this, but we found that kids needed a lot of support through heavy peer conversation, for Kristen and her co-teacher, Katie, that really looked like small groups in conferences. Okay. Still no baby. I mean, we should really take bets in terms of am I going to make it through this whole presentation without a baby? I do. I secretly kind of want it to happen.
I kind of really want it to happen.
Don't you want to happen? I do too. We should start chanting, baby, baby. Okay, so let's talk about step 3. We're halfway there. And if I'm perfectly honest, stage 3 is my favorite. In stage 3, when I was in Kristen's classroom, that stopped me in my tracks. And I got out my phone and I just kept taking pictures because I was motivated, I was excited, I felt really interested in what we call now stage 3 or step 3, kids develop thinking guides. In this 3rd stage, when kids have finished their books, and they finish their annotations, we offer students a canvas in the form of a blank piece of paper to illustrate their own journey of thinking that they've traveled over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. And in that capturing of a journey, that is a big invitation of just like, show me how your mind arrived at this thinking. In that process, kids then developed even new strands of thinking. So this stage is really punctuated by questions that drove the inquiry. What thoughts do you have about this text now that you're on the other side of this work? How are your different ideas connected? Is there one idea that you want to spotlight and think about more in a more formal piece of writing? What have you realized? What's your pathway of thinking through this book? And this stage really gives kids the freedom to explore their thinking and find ways to bring it together visually, right? It's that moment, if I'm a circular thinker, I'm putting all the pieces out that I've thought about and really seeing how they go together. If I'm a linear thinker, I'm kind of lining things up of like, first I thought this and I thought this. If I'm a perseverator, which I tend to be, it's a fun fact, I might zoom in on one character or one critical scene or one symbol and really just explore my thoughts around that. And students begin with the same materials. It's just blank paper and colored pencils or markers. There are digital ways we can do this work too, but each student has the opportunity to illustrate the development of their own thinking process across a chosen text. So it's kind of this like, look at me go moment, right? It's a moment where kids can like make something to be like, this is what I think. This is how my mind worked. And we really encouraged expression of development. We encouraged ramblings and musings where students could track smaller realizations across the page that led to larger thinking. Some kids were more linear, some kids were more abstract. We encouraged students to illustrate and use color symbolically, as this is the stage to really help kids explore how their minds individually work. And so collected things that looked like this, right? So this is Kristen obviously modeling, right, of what a thinking guide could look like post annotations and annotating your own annotations and really getting a sense of how do I see this all moving together. We found that this stage, because it's right before we have kids write a literary essay or a blog post or give a book talk, we found this stage really helped kids not just kind of like assimilate all their thinking onto one page, but even highlight their biggest ideas that they have about this text. And really what's on this page becomes the potential for the thesis statement that drives the final piece of work. Once kids can get a sense of what it all looks like visually on the page, right? So, you know, Xana here might get a sense of this is really a book, right, about pain and loss and suffering. And it's about how to learn to move on after a chapter closes or someone dies. And it's about letting go, but still having them in your hearts. And here, you know, the student is just kind of illustrating her thinking of how she arrived at these moments. You know, that's a good way to visually see, do I have enough here to support a literary essay? Or do I need to go back to the drawing board and try out a different idea? In Kristen's classroom, you know, Kristen embraces what Catherine Bomer calls the Me Too moment, right? That when we hear someone else's story, when we see someone else's work, when we see how another student's mind works, we then can get intel of how our minds work. And so Kristen would routinely make sure to give kids access to other people's thinking guides. That could look like a gallery walk where the kids put this on their desk, complete or not complete, and kids do a quick spin around the room to get a sense of, oh, I could lay out my thinking this way or this way. It could look like, when I would be in her classroom doing this work, kids were making these in the room. It wasn't something that they would do outside of class. At least they would start them so that the table could, of kids, because her kids sit in tables, could see how each other were really thinking. And let me just see here. I want to get back to you guys. Let me try that one more time. Okay, fantastic. You know, and I would routinely just go around and take pictures madly with my phone. And usually at each table of kids, every thinking guide looked different. And that was worth celebrating. And if we then saw students that struggled, we could have them peek over to a partner's thinking guide and get a sense of that. Or obviously we're keeping our own and we could do a quick mid-workshop interruption or interrupt the work period for a moment and say, you know, I just want to hold up Sean's thinking guide. And this is a really interesting way that his mind is working here. And so it generates engagement and buy-in and celebration, and kids are feeling unique, which is really important, right? For kids to feel a sense of pride and authentic, feel like their work is authentic to them. And so it generates this buzz where then it launches into stage 4 or step 4, which is our destination of these independent reading journeys. So as all journeys have destinations, or most of them, we help students culminate their independent reading journeys into a final piece of writing. Now that could look like a published essay, like a literary essay. It could look like just a notebook entry that's more formal. It could look like a speech. In Kristen's class and her entire 8th grade team at MS51 in Brooklyn, it looks like a blog post many times where students lean on their own thinking guides and create an organized piece of writing for a digital audience. And we found particular success with publishing online due to its interactive nature. Publishing online creates this expansive audience of readers, as well as facilitates a culture of response through peer-led commenting. So that authentic audience where each kid has kept a blog at least in Kristen's room, for quite a long time as her kids move through her class, obviously. It boosts engagement and work quality, and it, you know, it amplifies students' voices. I'm hearing Kristen Zemke in my mind, right? It amplifies the student voices in a way that's broader than just handing in a paper just to a teacher. So blogging platforms like WordPress or KidBlog, I mean, those are really known for being easy to use. They're safe, they're simple. And so, you know, in the digital world, in the print world, we celebrate thinkers, we follow thinkers, we want kids to feel like they can be creators of their own content and say, hey, I'm a thinker and my mind works this way, and look how I arrived at this idea about a text. And a digital platform seems like a really nice fit for that. So that last stage celebrates the destination that kids have propelled themselves with their own original thinking, following this kind of natural patterning of how their minds work. And they've had time to really investigate the corners of their thinking, following different leads or hunches about a character or a theme or a conflict. And instead of doing, you know, what I've definitely done, I'm not sure about you, but just like quickly producing a literary essay, just be like, you read the book, go write the essay. They've had time to really linger in their own thought process, to arrive at analysis as opposed to forcing it or taking somebody else's ideas, like a teacher or somebody else who's written about this text. And so, yeah, so independent reading journeys. And you know, one challenge that Kristen and I set up for ourselves after this year inquiry is, I don't know if this is just a process to arrive at analysis for a piece of literature or nonfiction. Like, this is probably a process that kids could take on in other content areas. And so teachers at MS51 have been trying on this independent reading journey process in their own content area classrooms, in science, in social studies, and math. And a couple are just fresh off the presses. I want to show them to you. I'm really excited about how other disciplines are taking this on, right? So here is a student that is taking on this type of thinking guide and process for observations in the spring. Right, this is a student that's taking on the same process in the social studies classroom. Math, I mean, math teachers is just my heroes, really thinking about this process. Does it help kids arrive at analytical thinking through the relationships between different types of functions? I want to have this kid come and explain everything to me because I'm so intrigued. And so I think what's really interesting is that this independent reading journey is a process that helps the analysis of many different kinds of texts and topics, that it can help you as a mathematician, as a scientist, as a historian. It helps you as a thinker. And that really are, I'll talk about resources in a moment here. But, you know, really our ultimate goal is for kids to move forward in their adolescence, knowing how their minds work, knowing how to percolate and think about how they might analyze a scientific concept, a piece of literature. You know, we knew with this inquiry that this was going to be a long game approach to reading, that this wasn't going to be a short game. We knew that we were setting up a process for kids to move through again and again throughout the year independently. We knew through trial and error and failure and shame and like, why isn't this working? We knew that kids didn't unlock the inner workings of their mind after the first or the second or even the third reading journey, that it really was that kids ended the year with a more confident grasp of how to make meaning or analyze or critique a text. So since students move through this month-long process repeatedly, they have an opportunity to see learning as recursive, right? That's Donna Santman from Shades of Meaning. That learning doesn't move steadily in one line, but it loops back over itself. It accumulates. It's messy. And strong learners, this is all Donna Santman, right? They build a space in their learning opportunities to take a step back and think about how they've grown, what goals that they might create in the future, how their mind is working. So because independent reading journeys, as we've come to see them, are cyclical across the year, kids kind of going on one every month, trying it again, students have multiple opportunities to practice and outgrow their prior work. And so before I move to resources, I want to end with what a student said to Kristen as he returned to her 8th grade classroom after a semester or his first year in high school. And, you know, he reported back to Kristen and said that, you know, the most important thing he learned in her room was how to think. And we want this kind of confidence and independence for our readers when they go into high school, when they go on post high school, whatever that looks like through their lives. We want students to know what to do when they come to that real time, when a text is handed to them, a book in English class, and it's like, all right, you got a week. I want you to read it and produce your own critique of this text by the end of the week. We wanted to have kids have an internalized rhythm that they could follow that would help them find the ways to arrive at that analysis. So this work we found, in sharing it with you, helped our students recognize and take pride in their unique thinking processes. And this is a journey of work, so it's still continuing. We would love to walk into your classroom virtually if you take on this work and see any stage of the process. What does stage 1 look like? What does stage 2 look like? Stage 3 is really cool. What does that look like? And so I want to close just by offering you some resources here. Places that you can find us post-presentation. First, I would definitely direct you to Kristen's blog, room116ela.blogspot.com. Kristen has been blogging for a long time, and you can see examples of this work and much more if you jump on over to her digital space. Kristen and I wrote up this inquiry in an article form, and you can find it in the NCTE's Voices from the Middle journal. It's in the December, I have a typo, so let's do this. I'm gonna slow down here, a typo. It's in the December 2016 issue, not 2017 issue. So I'll change that. So it was just from the latest December issue. We wrote it up. The pictures that you saw are all included in there, so you have access to them. And then if you head on over to kateandmaggie.com, on the Our Work tab, you can see the screenshot there. Under Resources, I will post this slideshare for you, or slideshow rather, so that you can check it out and linger on some of the pieces of student work and use them as mentors for yourself or your students, or make even better versions for yourself. And so those are 3 places that you can go to find more. So let's see here. It says I'm screen sharing and I don't want to. All right. So independent reading journeys. No, baby. No baby. I don't even know if you could hear a baby. He was squawking for a little bit, but we have made it. We have made it with just solo. Thank you so much, Chris, for this opportunity to share some of this work. I'm excited to take nap time and view other sessions.
Amazing. Thank you, Maggie, so much. And as you heard, there were a number of people online that were like, well, just go get the baby. Just go get go get the baby. So thank you so much. I was following the tweets. I know so many of us were just blown away, especially as then it came full circle to, well, it's not just about this amazing, responsive, real, authentic thinking about text with our readers, but this can also then bleed into social studies and science and math. Holy cow. So thank you very much. And for all of you, you can go just scroll down to the bottom, or if you're viewing on YouTube, you can go to the gathering page for this session 1, workshop 4, to read Maggie's bio, find a number of links of how to connect with her more from today. Thank you, Maggie, so much. So we're getting close to our next session, session 2. So here's just a preview of what's coming up and a reminder to pay the joy forward if you can. So you have a little bit of time here. You can take a stretch break, go get some water, go get some food. I'm gonna go grab a glass of water myself, and then prepare for session 2. We have amazing workshops coming up. So the book whisperer, Donalyn Miller, and her friend Travis Crowder are going to do a session for secondary teachers on expanding adolescents' worldview with young adult literature. We have Stephanie Schwab, who's here from BookSource, who we love, doing a session on summer reading from slide to success. And Stephanie will share about research and practices and ways that schools across the country are supporting students in really meaningful summer reading and summer reading supports for kids that reduces the summer slide or even eliminates the dangers of a summer slide. And that will cut across grades K through 12. Then we have EdClab colleague Heather Rocco bringing some of her supervisor and leadership friends along with her. It's Heather Rocco, Christopher Bronke. Christopher is the head of the National Blogging Collaborative, in addition to the work he does in his district. Dr. Emily Mexner and Una Abrams. Their session is in innovative approaches to professional development, grade K through 12. And then we're joined by Molly Feeney-Wood and Eric Lepis on their session for primary grade teachers on Pump Up the Volume, how to write powerful poetry in the primary grades, and lots of it. I keep saying today, gosh, I'm so jealous. I wish I could go to all of these. Well, actually, you can. So can I. All of these are archived, and you'll be able to come back to watch these again later. And then just a reminder, today is our gift to the education community. It's totally free, no registration. So we do ask that you consider paying the joy forward. If you go to our website, gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com, and click on either adopted charities, or you can even click right here, or find the link on the bottom of every page. You can scroll through the page to learn about the 3 charities that our keynote presenters from this morning chose, like Urban Word NYC, a nonprofit organization in New York City that celebrates the voices and stories of young people. This was chosen by Elizabeth Acevedo, who made us all cry at the end of her session. If you do donate to this or any of our charities from today, or any charity in general, we invite you to click this button here, Get My Badge, and you can add one of these swanky little I pledge to pay the joy forward badges that will be added to either your Facebook or your Twitter. You can choose profile pic, and you can let the world know that you are taking the great work of educators and really paying that joy forward. So thank you all for joining us. Go grab something quick while you can to eat or drink, and enjoy the next round of sessions coming up at the top of the hour. Thanks all.